What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel and to this overview of Komplete 14, the latest major update to Native Instruments' massive suite of plugins. What I thought I'd do today, because you have so many new plugins, it's close to impossible to go over all of them in one single video, is go through a song that I made using only stuff that you find in Komplete. So nothing else that you hear on this track is from anywhere else, including the EQs, reverbs, all of that. Nothing is from outside of Native Instruments Komplete. So before we move on to what I did on the individual tracks and how I use these various plugins, let's have a bit of a listen to the type of song that I made here. So that's the vibe. We have about 14 instruments here doing various things, and let's take it one section at a time and see what's happening. So we have initially 3 different layers. We have a drum and 2 different synths. One of them is a piano, but let's start with the drum. And the drum beat, this thing, is taken from Forte's very own drums. It's one of the presets, but modified a bit. I went in here and specifically with the kick, I turned down the decay because it was a bit too long and it was building up too much low end for what I wanted to do in the rest of the song with the bass and the other synths. And then I also added a couple of effects. Let's have a listen to what the preset with the slide modification sounded like. And then I added the VC76, and this is actually not compressing at all, but it is bringing up the level and giving me a bit of saturation that I felt that these drums needed. You can really hear it on the kick. It just makes it more aggressive and more in your face. And then I also added the RC48 on a random hall, and it's doing not that much, 19%, but it's just placing this drum kit in a room, in an actual space. It felt a bit claustrophobic without it. Adding that reverb just put everything into a nice space. So let's have a before and after. Then what I added were some chords on Alicia's keys. This is just the basic initial preset. Let's have a listen to what they sound like. And I went for the same approach, added a bit of VC76. This time it is compressing a bit. And then added the RC24 on a small hall sound. Let's have a listen to what these do individually. So it is barely touching it. I am on the piano preset and the output is a bit lower just because I used this as a fader rather than going for the fader on in the actual DAW. I added the RC24 to give it a bit of sense of space on the small hall preset. And it does something really pleasant to the stereo field as well. Again, it's not doing that much, 16%, but it just brings something extra to that piano sound. There's also a sort of pad type effect going on from Cloud Supply. It's the Coast Check preset. Let's have a listen to this. Nothing else to this one. I was happy with it. Let's have a listen to all three. I wanted to give the drum bit a bit of extra something on the snare hits, and I found this really cool sound in Empire Breaks. And as you can see, it's actually playing a pattern, but I muted everything else and I just left the claps. I like the tone of those, and I like the decay of that reverb. So with the drums, it sounds like this. And nothing else, just that sample there. I also added the prime bass with the Funky Fingers B preset. And I put this at half tempo, so let's listen to it in isolation. And this one already has some effects here, so you do have a bit of compression, actually 2 sets of compressors doing things and a bit of EQ. But say if you didn't want to use this nor this, you could add the VC 160. Let's have a listen to that in the mix. I actually like it more than with these 2 compressors on. Keeps it contained. I like that. Then the final thing I added for this section was a massive X patch, Mother Doom, but I did modify it slightly, especially the reverb and the amp envelope. Let's have a listen to this in isolation. And I also added the enhanced EQ, a sort of Kontakt style EQ, and I cut everything below 120, and on the Kontakt it kind of dips way farther up than this. And then with the high cut, I cut everything below 4K. Same idea, it actually cuts way lower than 4K, and it creates a sort of mid boost thing. And I could have used the mid frequency here, but I just like the way that curve sounded on this preset. So let's have a listen to what it actually does. It just takes away that sort of digital sizzle on top and a lot of low-end information that I don't necessarily need, given that I have bass piano covering that region. So let's have a listen to what everything sounds like. And then we get to sort of the first breakdown section, and on this one I did something a bit different. A strummed acoustic playing dead notes on a half note, but then I added guitar rig 6 and used this as a sort of effect to create a sort of brush sound. It's more of a percussive instrument than a guitar. So let's have a listen to what the guitar itself would have sounded like. But that's a bit much, so adding this some delays, realm, just to give it a sense of space. I disengaged the sequencer and LFO. It was doing things with the mix. I didn't necessarily care for that, but what these delays and reverb do is absolutely amazing, and it just makes everything sound like a brush, and it puts this sound more in the vein of a drum kit of percussion rather than an actual guitar strum. Then I actually also added an electric guitar. I went for electric vintage, ballad picking C, so let's have a listen to that. But the original sound sounded a bit too clean and flat for me, which was this. And it was a bit too upfront, so I added the unfiltered audio Lo-Fi AF. And then after this, I liked the texture of it, but I felt that there was a bit of a honk. So I added a passive EQ and did a lot of cutting at 560 and 680 with a really steep curve. So let's listen to a before and after. Then we have everything coming back. During the midway point, we have Super 8 coming into play with this bell sound. Which I modified by adding choral, which is a really nice chorus effect, and VC2A, a sort of LA optical style compressor. The sound was very peaky, so I added the LA2A to balance everything dynamically, so when you listen to this, it doesn't start sounding like you have spikes coming out of this section of the song. Then this patch goes down an octave for the second breakdown. After which, we have Noir playing a Particles Engine preset for hands. And I also added flare, a bit of flanging. Let's listen to what it sounds like without this. And with. Because of the flanging, you get a lot of cancellation, but it just creates this sort of eerie space, and it just fits that section really well, I think. And then finally, I used ignition keys to create a sort of climax of this section. and it's this preset Halls of Vol, and I played around with the reverb here. Finally, what I also did was add a bit of compression to the overall mix with the Vari comp. So this is on the Stereo Bus Tube Overdrives preset, and I'm aiming for up to 2 dBs of compression just to glue everything together, and I'm gonna put it in and out so you hear the difference. Everything kind of comes together a bit more. The drum sinks a bit in the background and lets the other instruments breathe around it, which I really like. And then I use the passive EQ to add a bit of a smiley face EQ to the whole thing. I added a high pass at 22 because I highly doubt anyone was going to need 22 hertz of something in this song. And then at 100 I boosted by 2.3, and then at 12K by 3.7. So again, a bit of a smiley face EQ. So let's have a listen to what that sounds like. And this being a mastering EQ, if you turn the knobs a lot, it doesn't change the sound as much as something like Pro Q would do. If you start boosting stuff in the extremes, you will really hear it. But with this, it's really nuanced and really nice. It's subtle, but I like what it's doing. And then finally, I added the BX limiter true peak to give me that final competitive level. And as you can see, this was a quiet mix. I added 9.3 dBs of gain, and I'm aiming for up to 3, maximum 4 dBs of gain reduction. And what I like about this is it also shows you what sort of the balance is in terms of panning. So it does seem like it's centered around mono, around that kick and snare and bass. And then it also shows you the correlation in terms of phase. So if stuff is out of phase, you'll definitely see it here, and you can then readjust. But yeah, the way I'm approaching this is I'm boosting this, I'm lowering the ceiling a bit to -2 just in case this gets converted to something like an MP3, and I'm aiming for 2, 3, maximum 4 dBs of gain reduction so that I do get that number of LUFS. It's not going to -10. I could definitely push it here or do it on the groups, but I think it sounds good enough like this, and Spotify, for instance, has -14 anyway, so it will sound loud. So that's my overview of Komplete 14, and you get these amazing plugins, you get synthesizers, sampled instruments, effects, anything that you can imagine. You can only use this to make amazing music. And what I want to do here at the end is play the whole song and toggle through some of those just so you see exactly what's happening. But as I said, everything that you hear comes from the Komplete 14 package, so I highly recommend you take a look at this, especially if you own some plugins from Native Instruments or you have Komplete, a previous version. I definitely think it's worth upgrading. But without further ado, I'm going to play you the song. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.